At exactly 3:33 p.m., Ethan was sitting in science class, watching the second hand crawl across the classroom clock. It was the kind of ordinary afternoon no one remembers until something impossible happens. Outside the window, the city looked peaceful. Cars moved through the streets, birds crossed the sky, the ocean shimmered beyond the buildings. Everything on Earth was moving exactly as it always had. Then the clock stopped. Not the power, not the sound. The second hand itself froze in place, as if time had caught on something invisible. For one strange moment, the whole classroom went silent. No one spoke, no one laughed. Even the teacher paused in the middle of her sentence, staring at the clock like it had betrayed her. Then the floor shifted. It was not an earthquake at first. It was softer, deeper, like the entire planet had taken a breath and forgotten how to let it out. Ethan looked at his teacher. His teacher looked at the window. Outside, something was happening to the sky. The clouds were no longer drifting, they were stretching. Long white clouds pulled across the horizon like paint dragged by an invisible hand. The light changed, the air seemed to tighten, and every instinct in Ethan's body told him to stay still. Then every phone in the classroom screamed at once. The same warning flashed across every screen. Global rotational anomaly detected. Seek shelter immediately. No one understood what it meant. But outside, the answer was already arriving. Wind rushed through the city in a way no storm ever had. Papers lifted from sidewalks. Trees bent sideways. Streetlights trembled. For 5 seconds, Earth had stopped spinning, but everything on Earth kept moving. The air, the oceans, the cities, and every fragile thing humans had built on top of the moving world. Across downtown streets, windows cracked under pressure, glass shimmered in the air. Office workers stepped back from the walls of their buildings, suddenly realizing how thin the line was between safety and sky. At the coast, the ocean pulled away from the shore, not gently, not like a tide. It retreated violently, dragging foam, boats, and silence behind it. Ships leaned against their anchors, wooden docks cracked apart, fish flapped across wet sand where waves had been seconds before. People stared at the empty sea, too stunned to run. Then the water came back, not as a wave but as a wall. It rose from the darkness of the horizon, carrying the weight of an ocean that had lost its rhythm. In the classroom, the lights flickered out, desks scraped across the floor, children dug beneath them as the building groaned, and the windows turned white with wind and dust. Ethan pressed his hands over his ears, but he could still hear it, a sound too large to belong to anything human. The sound of the world trying to keep moving without the ground beneath it. In New York, people froze beneath towers of glass. Reflections broke across the streets. Traffic lights swung violently above roads filled with cars that no longer seemed to know where forward was. In London, the river surged against its walls. Bridges shuddered. The water climbed higher than anyone expected, carrying boats and debris through the heart of the city. In Tokyo, trains stopped between stations. Emergency brakes screamed. Passengers held onto poles and seats, not knowing whether the danger was outside the train or beneath the entire planet. Above the Pacific, satellites watched storms twist into shapes no computer model had predicted. The atmosphere, still moving at impossible speed, wrapped itself around the Earth like a torn veil. From space, the planet looked peaceful, blue, silent, beautiful. But for 5 seconds, that beauty had become fragile. Earth had stopped and humanity had felt it. Then, just as suddenly, Earth started again, but the restart was worse. The planet did not return gently. It shuddered back into motion like a giant waking from a nightmare. Everything that had been thrown forward was pulled again. Wind changed direction. Signs twisted. Smoke reversed. People looked around, unable to understand which way the world was moving anymore. The oceans folded over themselves, waves collided with waves, harbors became whirlpools. The sea no longer behaved like water, it behaved like memory broken and confused. The sky flashed with lightning from storms forming too quickly to name. Weather systems that should have taken days to build were born in minutes, spinning above cities that had no time to prepare. When the shaking eased, Ethan crawled out from beneath his desk. His hands were trembling. The room was dark, and the air tasted like dust and electricity. Vapors covered the floor. A crack ran across the classroom wall beside the window. The teacher counted students softly, her voice steady only because it had to be. Outside, the city was still standing, but it no longer looked untouched. Cars sat sideways in the streets. Smoke rose between buildings. People stood in the open, staring upward like the sky might betray them again. Then Ethan saw the ocean. The water had not returned to where it belonged. It moved in restless lines, pulling away and rushing back, as if the sea had forgotten its own rules. Within minutes, emergency broadcasts appeared on cracked phones, battery-powered radios, and darkened screens. Scientists confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Earth's rotation had stopped for exactly 5 seconds. No country had caused it. No machine had done it. No meteor had struck. There was no explanation yet, only consequences, and the first consequence was wind. The second consequence was water. Oceans had shifted, ports flooded, islands reported the sea rising and falling without rhythm. For the first time, tides felt less like nature and more like warning. The third consequence was time, not clocks. People could fix clocks, but sunrise and sunset no longer felt guaranteed. After those 5 seconds, no one looked at the sky the same way. That night, Ethan and his family sat in the hallway with their neighbors. The power was gone. The elevators had stopped. Someone lit candles. Someone passed around bottles of water. A little girl asked if the earth could stop again. No one answered right away, because every adult in that hallway wanted to say no, but no one knew if it was true. Ethan looked down at his hands. They were still shaking, not because of the wind, not because of the broken glass, but because he had felt something no human was ever meant to feel. By morning, the world had changed. Airports stayed closed. Coastal roads were buried in mud. Millions woke up in shelters, schools, subway stations, and churches. But there was something else too. People were helping each other. Strangers cleared glass from sidewalks. Neighbors shared food. Families opened their homes. In the middle of fear, humanity did what it had always done. It held on. 3 days later, Ethan returned to the beach with his father. The shoreline was different now. Broken signs, seaweed, and pieces of wood lay scattered across the sand. The sun was setting slowly over the ocean, beautiful and calm, like nothing had happened. Ethan's father said, "We always think the ground is still, but it never is." Ethan looked at the horizon and finally understood. Earth was not just a place, it was motion, balance, speed, gravity, air, water, everything working together so perfectly that most people never noticed, until 5 seconds reminded them. The miracle was not that Earth stopped. The miracle was that every day before that it never had.